Hello again. Welcome to the first lecture for the second chapter of Introduction to the Art of Programming Using Scala. In the first chapter, we basically talked about basics of computation, programming, different models of programming. The second chapter, we're going to start actually using the computer to do stuff, and a big part of that is the environment that we work in. Now, one of the great advantages of Scala is that Scala runs under almost every environment. It'll run under Windows and Mac and Linux, basically any place that the Java virtual machine is imported to, and a large number of platforms have Java running on them. However, for the way that Scala is going to be taught in this book, there are certain advantages to having a good command line. And a lot of the exercises we're going to do and the examples that I will be doing in these videos, I will be using a Linux command line. So while Scala runs just fine under Windows, it will be easier for you to follow along if you have access to a command line. Now, Mac OS X runs under on top of BSD Unix, so it turns out that if you're on a Mac, everything works just fine. If you happen to be running Linux, everything will work just fine. But if you're on Windows, it might be helpful to set up the environment that's described in this video. Even if you do run Linux or a Mac, you still might want to do this, because one of the things that I've done for you here is I've installed all the needed software on this virtual environment. So if you go to the website for the book, and you go under chapters, because we are in chapter 2 here, you'll see there is a link to Virtualbox and the Linux Mint environment. So if you click on that link, there's some description here. There is a link to the Virtualbox website, which will take you here. Virtualbox is a virtualization piece of software, which means that it allows you to effectively act like you have a whole computer running in one window, so that you can run a separate operating system in a window underneath another operating system. There are multiple products that do this. For example, Vmware is probably the most popular virtualization software. I've chosen to use Virtualbox in large part because it is completely free. VMware has a free player, but their other products cost money, and I wanted to go with something that everyone out there could download and use. Virtualbox has versions for Linux and Windows and Mac, so regardless of the platform you're on, you can download Virtualbox and install it. After you've installed Virtualbox, you will want to download the disk image that I created, and so this is where I built a setup of Linux Mint and then installed the various software that's needed. I installed Java and Scala and Eclipse with the Scala plugin. One thing that should be noted is this file is almost 4 gigabytes in size, so it will take you a while to download. But once you've installed Virtualbox and you have the image downloaded, then you can run Virtualbox, and you will get something somewhat like this. I already have 2 operating systems on here. You won't to start with. But you will just go and click New, just like I do, and we'll run through a little wizard for creating this. I'm going to call this Linux Mint. You can see when I typed in Linux, it automatically decided that I was wanting to run Linux, and I'm happy with these settings here. The next choice we have to make is how much memory to give this. 256 megs is not really going to be happy. We want to give this more than that. Ideally, I'd love to give the virtual machine up to maybe 4 gigs of RAM, but as it happens, the computer I'm running on right now only has 4 gigs of RAM, and you can see this color coding. There's green here at the bottom and some pink, and it goes into a darker, almost red color here. I'm going to go to the top of the green, which basically gives it about half of the memory on my computer. If your computer has 8 gigs or 16 gigs, feel free to give a full 4 gigs to the virtual machine, especially if you go through into the second half of the book where we start using Eclipse. That'll wind up being very helpful. Then you have to create the disk. Now you can feel free to play around and build your own systems on these virtualized areas, in which case you would create a new disk, but you want to use the one that I've built for you. So I select the use an existing disk, and then I go looking for it. I happen to save this linuxmint.vdi, which is what you get if you click on the link over here. I saved it under the Virtualbox directory. It doesn't need to be there. You can have it wherever you want. Just after you start using it, don't delete it. So I can select that. It notices I set it up so that this disk image is only going up to 100 gigabytes. You're not going to be doing too much under it with that, but it should be enough for what you need to do as part of this book. And if you decide to push it further, you might want to wind up creating a dual boot with Linux or something along those lines. Then we click Next. It gives us a summary of what we are about to set up, and I say Create, and there we go. I have a new machine here. And if I just click on Start, that machine will start up. So VirtualBox is starting. Basically, as I said, it's a little machine in a window. You'll notice that my pointer goes away in there because right now the operating system is not supporting that. There are little indicators that show you when the virtual disk is running, networking, USB, etc. So there gives you an idea kind of like what the little indicators would be on a machine. That just popped up, and it's actually significantly larger than my capture space, so I'll drag it in here. You won't be able to see the whole thing. But you can see it's bringing up this environment. If I pull this around, you can see other parts of what's there. So most of what we're going to be doing, we will do in a terminal. And so starting with the next video, we'll be playing around in the terminal. You can open a terminal by doing Accessories and Terminal. Two things you should know about this. This was built with an image where the user is called student, and that might not be your normal login, but it seemed to work as a reasonable name to use here. And in addition to that, the password for student is Scala with a capital S. It's not a very secure password, but this is just a virtual machine that you're running inside of your own machine, so I wasn't too worried about security. Feel free to change that, and in fact, in one of the coming videos, we'll talk about how you can change that. So you should probably consider going out to the website, download VirtualBox, install it, download the disk image, set this up, and that way you will be able to easily follow along with the coming videos.